Welcome to the whirlpool of the unsolved. I'm your host, Frank. Thanks for tuning in. Here I talk about unsolved cases, mysteries, unsolved crimes, and more from some of the most popular cases known to the ones that aren't really spoken much about. So I hope you enjoy the show. In today's episode, we will be talking about the strange and mysterious disappearance of the sodder-family children. A big family hit with a major tragedy. A mysterious tragedy nonetheless. A fire that had consumed the family's home, but the outcome was unexpected. A family with 10 children, but the fire apparently consumed 5 of those children. The horrifying part is that after the fire died down and firemen were able to look around, no bodies were discovered. What happened to the children? What happened to the family? The truth is, this is a case with many theories, many speculations, with many questions, with little to no answers. This is truly a head-scratching case nonetheless, a case that is still unsolved to this day, with the remaining of the family still clinging on to hope for some answers. So going into this case, the disappearance of the Sodder family, children, honestly, this is going to most likely be either a 2-part or a 3-part episode. I am going to stretch it a week apart, so you won't hear the second part until the next week that this episode is released. So warning. But this case is a very strange case, a very long case, and very interesting. So let's go ahead and get into the victims. Now, the victims of this horrendous situation were the Sodder family. Like I said, they were a big family of 10 children, not including the parents, meaning a family of 12 in total. But only 9 of the children were living in the house at the time of the fire. So keep that in mind. There was only 9 of them that lived in the house during that period of time. The 5 children that disappeared and never found were Marie Sodder, who was 14 years old at the time, Martha, who was 12, Louis, who was 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, who was 5. They were all very young, 2 of them being boys and 3 of them being girls. They were really, really young if you really think about it. And this is a horrendous situation. Clearly, it was a house fire. And we'll get into why this is an unsolved case rather than just an accidental fire. Though in this particular case, accidental fire is really thrown out there a lot. But there's so much more that goes into this case. And knowing that it has children involved, like these are children. And I'm gonna say this every single time I do a case with children. It hits home. It hits different. Because these are children that have their whole entire life ahead of them. And, you have a 14, 12, 8, 9, 8, and a 5-year-old. 5 being the youngest, which is very, very sad. Now, this house fire, did take place clearly in the family's residence, which it was located in Fayetteville, West Virginia. And this incident did happen, and this is the worst part about it. It's when it happened. It happened on Christmas Eve, on December 24th of 1945. So, can you just picture that? You're expecting an amazing Christmas. You're expecting, you're expecting so much. And there's so much going on in this period of time because it's the holidays, big family. I can only imagine, like I grew up with a whole bunch of siblings. It was, I think, 5 of us in the house. And Christmas, on good Christmas years, it was filled with eagerness and, us staying up late and wanting to open our presents and stuff like that. So I can only picture this family full of, young children on Christmas Eve. It's really sad when you think about it. But let's go ahead and get into what happened, how this all occurred, the story behind what happened to the children. So what happened the night of the fire can be considered very strange and weird. Honestly, it really can. In this case, you'll see there's a lot of things going on. There really is. There's a lot of moving parts. But the night of the fire is truly something out of a book. Like, it's out of a story. You can't, like, you can make this up. Like, you would open a book, a fictional book, and possibly read this. This is almost story-like. The night of the fire, the oldest daughter, Marion, was working at the time at a dime store in downtown Fayetteville. So she was working, she wasn't home. She decided to surprise her three youngest sister with a gift for Christmas. So not only was she working, but she decided, hey, you know what? I want to get something for my little sisters. So she got them a gift. Knowing this, the children wanted to stay up a little later than usual so they could open their gifts as soon as they could. So, her sisters are like, hey, mom, I want to stay up. We want to stay up. Marion got us gifts, and they're eager. They're kids, so clearly that they're gonna want to stay up. After going to their mother about the request, the mother agreed to allow them to stay up later, as long. So mom agreed as long as the two oldest boys were still awake. That's one, and as well as they carried out their chores. So mom was like, okay, you guys can go ahead and stay up later than usual, as long as your brothers go ahead and, stay up and also complete their chores, which was, to remember to put the cows in and feed the chickens before going to bed themselves. So that was their chores, just to make sure that the cows were in and, the chickens were taken care of. Those were their chores, which the oldest boys of the family, which was, okay, sorry. Now, they did that. They did do those things. Now, the oldest boys of the family, as well as George, the father, had called it an early night, that night of the fire. So, Christmas Eve, that night, the two oldest and the father decided to call it a night early. And it was John and George Jr., those were the two oldest, who were 23 and 16 at the time. They had spent the day working with their father. So that's what led them to going to bed early that night. So you got to think about it. They're out with their father. They're working. They're tired. You come home, and you just want to relax. You just want to go to bed. And that's what they did. Jenny, who is the mother, after reminding the other children about the chores, had gone upstairs and took with her Sylvia, who was 2 years old at the time. So this is the baby. So after mom went ahead and told, the kids, okay, you guys can stay up longer. Just make sure that they stay up with you and they do their chores. That's fine. After she told them everything, she went ahead, took Sylvia with her, and they went upstairs. They both went to bed after going to the room. So after they got to the room, they went straight to bed. Now, this is where it gets a bit strange. Like, this is where you start thinking, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but truly this is one of those situations where you start really, really thinking. Okay, so now we have an idea of what happened prior to the fire, okay? And we're going to get into the strangeness right now, okay? So this is what occurred prior to the fire, okay? So you got the kids wanted to stay up because Marion got them gifts, and then mom telling, the other boys, make sure you do your chores, and then the father and the two oldest, they're already in bed, they're tired, and mom takes daughter upstairs, the youngest one, and they're going to bed as well. So this is what happened prior to this weird and strange situation, okay? So now, okay, so at this point, it's 12:30 in the morning. Okay, it's 12:30 in the morning, and the house phone rings. Jenny, the mother, woke up to the sound and went to answer the phone. So this is really strange. Now, it's 1945 if I'm not mistaken. So there's no cell phones. There's house phones. 12:30 in the morning. Hmm. Christmas Eve. Okay, I don't really know. I understand if it was New Year's Eve or something like that. Everybody calling you to say Happy New Year's, whatever the case may be. But Christmas Eve, well, at this point, it's Christmas morning. But still, 12:30 in the morning. Phone rings. Jenny wakes up to the sound of the phone ringing, and she goes to answer the phone. Now, the person that called her, we don't know who exactly it was that called her, but we know for sure it was a woman. Now, Jenny didn't recognize the woman's voice at all. She didn't recognize her voice at all. She asked for a name. The woman gave her a name, but she didn't recognize. I think it was that she didn't give her a name, but she didn't recognize her voice either. Like she couldn't recognize who it was that was calling. And the crazy part about it is that she could hear on the other side of the phone laughter and clicking of glass. So like she can hear people laughing and clinking of the glass, so people just cheering or things like that. Now that's really strange if you ask me. 12:30 in the morning, you're calling me, you're laughing. I don't even know who you are. This is strange. Now Jenny eventually told the lady that she had the wrong number, but then but was then replied with laughter. So after Jenny tells this woman, "Hey, I'm sorry, but you got the wrong number," this woman starts laughing at her. Like, seriously, tell me that that's not strange. Which, the way that Jenny considered it, she considered it as a weird laughter. So, was it like a mischievous laughter? I don't know, because aware laughter, people laugh differently. But sometimes if you ever hear a person laugh that's doing something mischievous, you can kind of tell it has like a little ring to it, it's something different about it. I don't know if it was like a mischievous laugh or something, but she did consider the laughter to be weird. If and that's the truth. Honestly, I think it was possibly a mischievous laughter. Now, after this weird occurrence, which you and I can all agree that it was a weird occurrence, Jenny hung up the phone. But before she got back to bed, she did notice some strange things. Like, she noticed something that was out of sorts. She noticed that the lights were still on and the curtains were not closed. So this was strange because these are two things that the kids would normally do when they stood up longer than the parents did. So that's why it was strange for her, because you got to understand, like, this is something out of the norm. Like, picture this: your kids stay up, you let them know, like, hey, you can stay up, and every time they stay up longer than you, they know, hey, they have to turn off the TV, they have to turn off the lights, they have a routine. And if they do it all the time, you kind of notice when they don't do it. So in this case, she noticed these two things. Um, and the thing is that this was one of their responsibilities, and they knew it. So she noticed that Marion had fallen asleep on the living room couch. So that was another thing. So it was out of sorts. Like I said, things were still on, curtains were still open. And then she sees Marion asleep on the couch, living room couch. Seeing Marion asleep on the couch, Jenny assumed that the other children were back in the attic where they slept. So the other children, the attic was a room. I'm assuming it was in a room, like, because I don't know, especially for people in Florida, I don't know if there's a lot of houses here in general that have attics. But the thing is, up north, attics, a lot of people make them into bedrooms. So it's possible that they converted this attic as a bedroom and not a storage room. So, and being a big family, I'm assuming that they decided to use that as a bedroom rather than a storage room. So, she assumed that they were back in their bedroom, which was in the attic. She turned off the lights and closed the curtains and headed back to bed. Okay, so I'm assuming she was probably upset a little bit or something like that. But regardless of what, this is Christmas morning. She just woke up because this weird, strange phone call came through, and it was this weird woman that she didn't recognize at all. As you can see, there is so much going on before this fire has even occurred. And this is where I really want to emphasize this, because a lot of times in cases, we don't know, there's not a lot of information when it comes to what happened prior to an incident. And in this case, we have so much detail of what happened. Happened in Christmas Eve. We know who was where, what they were doing. We know all this information. And then we get even weirder information with a random person calling at 12:30 in the morning. Now, I know you're probably like, how is this unsolved? Is this just, from the sounds of it, kids just burned? There's a lot more. I'm telling you, this is a case where there's so much information. To be honest with you, I am cutting this short. Like I am cutting this drastically short. Like, this is one of those cases that you can possibly do a whole entire month on, with the amount of information that there is and the amount of there's just so much. There's so much theories. There's so much speculations. There's just so much for this case. And we haven't even hit anything. I'm being honest. So now we have all this information at hand. I hope you remember all this information. We got a phone call at a very extremely strange time with a character that feels very strange. So after about a half an hour, after that strange phone call, so this is a half hour after Jenny got up and answered this call, Jenny was woken up again. This time, what woke her up was a sound of an object hitting the rooftop and rolling down the roof. So that, if you ask me, is honestly very, very strange. Half hour earlier, so now we're looking at roughly 1 o'clock in the morning. A half hour earlier, you get this strange phone call. Sound like somebody's very jolly, Christmas, very jolly. And then they laugh at you when you tell them that they possibly got the wrong number. And then you go back to sleep, and a half hour in, you hear something bang, like fall onto your rooftop and roll down. Coincidence? Honestly, if you ask me, I don't think so. Me being a person, having a family, things like that, I would be very suspicious. It's me now that if it's 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm up watching TV or something like that, if I hear something by my carport or in my yard, I have a tendency of turning on the light and going out there. So I don't just believe in coincidences. I believe that you have to be very cautious and secured. So that's just me as a person. But yeah, this is just extremely, extremely weird. Okay? Really, really weird. Now, after not hearing anything else, she fell back to sleep. So I'm pretty sure she stood up for a little bit, and nothing happened. So she decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go back to sleep. But once again, she woke up, this time to the smell of smoke. She got up and saw that George's room that he used as an office. So she seen that George's room that he used as an office was actually on fire. So she smelled smoke. She stepped out. She seen that his office was actually on fire. The fire was around the telephone line and the fuse box. So now we know that there's a fuse box around there in that room and a telephone line. So she's seen that the fire was actually around these two things. After witnessing this, she immediately woke up George, and in turn, he woke up their older sons, the two oldest that worked with him. Now, the thing is here, not everyone made it out. And clearly we know that not everybody made it out because we're in a situation where we lost some kids. As we can tell, like I said, from the intro of this case, both parents and 4 of the children did make it out. Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., they made it out. When the parents and the children got out, they screamed and yelled to try and get the attention of the other children, which they believed were still in the attic during the fire. But there was no response whatsoever. Apparently, George said that he couldn't go up the stairs because the staircase had already been in flames. But the weird part of all of this is that in the first interview with the police, he claimed that he had gone up the stairs, but didn't see any of the children. So this is very strange, which if you ask me, like I said, is very strange. But then later on, he did change his story, saying that he had just called up to the attic, which, like I said, is strange. Why would you change the story in such a drastic way? We're going from, saying that you went up the stairs, try to call them, and nobody was there, to, yeah, I didn't go up the stairs. I just went ahead and, screamed up, and I didn't get anybody. Nobody, reacted to me calling out. Now, the thing is, when it came to recovering the children, it was a very weird situation. Keeping in mind that the area that they lived in was somewhat country, so rural. They didn't really have phones around to make calls. They got into contact with one of the neighbors, but calling the fire department didn't go far. Marion, the one that ran to the neighbor's house, couldn't get in touch with the operator to get the fire station's attention to get down to the burning house. Now, there was someone that was driving that had seen the flames as well, and they headed to the nearby tavern to call the operator, but had an issue as well getting in contact with them. Now, this, if you ask me, is truly a strange situation. The reason why I say it's a strange situation, even though it's in a rural area, very country, the reason why I say it's a strange situation is because you would assume that you would be able to get in contact, somebody would be able to get in contact with the station regardless of what. Regardless of what. There should always be somebody at the station, and this is literally, if you really think about it, this is around 1:30 in the morning. This is very early in the morning. I understand they probably don't have a lot of firefighters around at that time, whatever the case may be, but still, I'm pretty sure there's not massive buildings burning at this time. So my whole thing is, why weren't they able to get in contact with somebody at the fire station? That was my whole thought process when it came to this situation. And there's so much more when it comes to this fire department that just boggles my mind. And since we're running out of time, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. And we're going to talk more about the fire and what happened during and after the fire in the next part. And like I said, this case may be a 3-parter. So there's a lot of information when it comes to this case. And it's very, very strange. So I wouldn't miss it if I were you, because the minute you listen to this one, you're going to want to listen to the second part and then the third part, because there's so much information to gain from this, and it'll make you wonder, why did certain things go the way that they did, and why certain things didn't go the way that they should have. So I'm going to leave it here because, like I said, we want to make sure that you get all the information, and we don't want to go over time. So we're going to leave it here, and we're going to come back next week for the second part. And by that time, I'll be able to tell you if we're going to need a third part, because, like I said, this case is juicy. So with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Whirlpool of the Unsolved. Check in next week for a new episode, and make sure that you like the podcast and follow the social media pages. Instagram at Whirlpool of the Unsolved Podcast, Twitter at WTO Unsolved Pod, and the Facebook page. Till next time.